Hello, book nerds. Welcome to the Booknerds Podcast, where we discuss the best books from across the globe. It's a proud day for us at the Booknerds because we have with us Mr. Andy Griffiths, who is an awesome author from Australia. For those who don't know about him, which would be quite strange, but he's the author of the Treehouse series right here. I was going through this one all day and rereading this one. And of course, just kidding. So, yeah, his books have sold across the globe and more than, I suppose, 10 million copies, isn't it, Andy? More than 10
Something
million
like
copies.
that.
Yeah. And he has co-authored those books with Terry Denton, who has illustrated those books. And more than 30 books. I mean, quite a journey. You started back in 1997 and it's 2020. Strange times, but hope you're doing well. Welcome to the Book Nerds Podcast.
Thank you very much. Great to be here. Yeah.
Andy, you told me earlier before we started that you're working on the next one already, the 130 story Treehouse. So how's that
Yeah.
working out? How has the current situation, affected you? Has it affected you in any way, or everything is going on similarly?
Well, I work at home with my wife Jill, who is the editor of the book and one of the characters.
Yes.
So our working life is not so different, but the isolation has been actually a bit of a godsend to us because we had a problem with the latest book. We work on them for a year. It takes a year to go from start to finish. A lot of work. And we thought we'd finished, and Terry had sent us all the rough drawings. And when we get the roughs, we begin to see the text in a whole new way. We see where it's a bit boring sometimes, where if too many people are talking, his pictures are just people talking. And we go, oh, we always forget that. So we have to edit and get rid of the talking. Yeah. And other times it's too complicated. So we've asked for impossible things. And so then we have to simplify it. And 130 has not come easily. It's had problems all the way along. And when we got the drawings, we went, we haven't finished. This is just a draft. It's not finished. So we said, right, well, we've got nothing else to do for the next month. Let's pull it all apart again. So in that way, it's a 3-person collaboration, and sometimes can be really painstaking.
Yeah. By the way, my favorite character is Jill. Please tell her about it because she loves animals. That's why, and I love animals. I love animals too. Talking about the 117 story Treehouse, the first few pages, suddenly you are like smashed in the face by so much of illustration. There's so much going on. I mean, there's a whole wide world out there, and I was like, okay, where to look? So and later on, it all settles down, and it is the story takes its course. So is that a structure that you follow in all the books, or it's just this one?
With the Treehouse series, there's a certain structure that stays. It always starts the same way, with Andy, the narrator, coming on. Hi, I'm Andy. This is our treehouse. These are the new levels. So that helps the reader because it's familiar and we're back in that world. It helps me because I know I have to have 13 new levels for each book. And with those 13 levels, they start to suggest what the problems in this book might be. We know the main problem, the first problem is we've got to write the book, but there are so many distractions in the treehouse, that's going to be a problem. Yeah. We know that Terry is not going to be doing his work.
Yes.
We know that Andy is going to be trying to get him to do his work,
True.
But being part of the problem at the same time. Yeah. And we know that Jill is going to solve problems and help them solve problems along the way. And then we get to the end of the book where they've solved all the problems, but they haven't written their book. And then we write the book about everything we just did. And then we have to get it to Mr. Big Nose, the publisher, in a creative way. So there's a kind of very loose structure that allows us to go anywhere in between, but always gives us a beginning and an end, and that's very helpful.
Yeah. But Andy, why do you troll the publishers so much? Because I was laughing out loud when I was reading those parts, and Mr. Big Nose and the Big Nose Publishing. It is so funny. I mean, what was the thought of your publisher on that one?
Oh, they were fine. They were fine. We have a long relationship, very happy relationship. There's no yelling. He's not telling us, if you don't get your book done on time, you're going to, have to go back to the zoo and be the monkeys in the zoo, that job you hated. But that pressure is really from us and from our audience who are hanging out for a book each year. Yeah. So we put that pressure on ourselves. Mr. Big Nose in the book is really like the big bad wolf in The Three Little Pigs and the big bad wolf. Yeah. It wouldn't be as much fun if he wasn't huffing and puffing and threatening to blow the house down. So that's just an extra bit of pressure on the characters as they deal with all the other problems. So that's his role, to huff and puff.
Yes. So it was quite a reading journey for me this week, because I read Just Kidding first, and then the Treehouse, and the formats are so different. With Just Kidding, I was like, I found it slightly hard to read because I'm not used to reading those kind of books. But it was like when I got into it, it was so much of fun. I mean, what have you learned over these years? You started back in 1997, and 2020 has the publishing industry also changed a little bit? Have you guys changed?
I don't know if we've changed, actually. I think we've always been interested in making the reader laugh and being as silly as we can, like profoundly silly, because we know we love that. And if we're true to that, the kids respond because they know we're kind of being genuinely silly. So each book is an attempt to go beyond where we went in the previous book. Okay. Now you'll notice in Just Tricking, that's 80% text and 20% Terry. That's when we first, that's when we first started out. Terry and I didn't work together so much, as I would write the stories over a year and then he would get it. And I said, just be crazy in the margins. Like, don't draw what we're talking about. Just you be yourself and be like a commentary on some of it, but some of it's just mad. Yeah. And he just filled up the margins and basically created a book within a book, which gives an endless rereadability. You can always find new things in there that you haven't. And it makes the book more attractive to pick up in the first place. Yeah. I'd been an English teacher. Yeah. I'd seen kids who didn't like reading very much. This is in the late 80s. Yeah. And I said to Terry, we need to get something to entice them into the book. And once they're playing with the book and flicking the corners, getting those little flick pictures, then maybe they'll trust me to read the first sentence of my story. Right. So that's how that started. And we did a book each year. They built in popularity. And Terry would always leave his work right to the last minute. Like he's the opposite. I plan and I don't like too much pressure. Okay. But he leaves it right to the deadline and then starts working. And out it all comes. He's a very stream of consciousness, very intuitive sort of person. I can go, I am that to a point, but I'm also very structured and planning, and Jill is even more so. She makes us structure it so that the reader can follow a through line. Yeah. Left to his own devices, Terry will create a book and it'll be incomprehensible to most human beings. Yes. But when we all get together, we get that perfect blend. Yeah. And so I said to Terry one day, look, I love what you're doing in the margins. Let's do a book together where I'm not writing it ahead of time. We're actually in the room together. I come up with an idea, you draw something, that gives me more ideas. So that was a wonderful time in our lives where we would meet every couple of weeks, spend an entire day together, just making each other laugh.
Yeah.
And we did 6 different books through that period,
Wow.
all kind of experimental books where my words were much less and his drawings were much greater.
Okay.
And we discovered a way of telling a story where I could tell quite a complex story with very few words because I could rely on his pictures to do all the work of description. And so when we got to the 13-story Treehouse, which was the 7th experimental book, that was the one that took off because we had a beginning, a middle, and an end. And we had recognisable characters. We had nice characters. They're basically nice people. Yeah. Whereas in the previous books, everyone in those books were kind of insane. And they were dying for no reason other than it was funny. So there was no real heart in those books. They were all head-driven madness. But Treehouse really hit. So it contains elements of all of the other books, but in just the right amount, so that a child who can't read even can almost follow the story of a Treehouse book with the pictures.
Yeah,
it's very hard to do.
Yeah, I totally understand that because my 4-year-old daughter, she can't read per se, but she could just follow it, and she was having fun with all the characters. Yeah. So she enjoyed it.
You're there as an adult to help her through.
Yeah.
But one complaint I get from adults is they get halfway through the books with their children, and then their children race ahead and they don't wait for the adults. He finished the book without me. But that's the other thing we tried to do, is to entertain the children, but also entertain the parent or the teacher who is reading with the child. It's a group activity. Yeah. So we want everyone involved.
Yeah. So tell me something. I mean, it sounds like, there's a book. I mean, there are around more than 350 pages in this book. And it's a lot of work. Looks like a lot of work. You said that you take at least a year. So it must be like, you have to work on it every day. So is there a certain schedule you have to follow? Because you said that I feel like you guys are the book Avengers or something. You have got all the ingredients because Terry is like, more say carefree, and you are quite structured. So how does it all work?
These days, I mean, it changes almost with every book, but if there's probably a couple of months where I'm just playing with ideas, running ideas past Jill, say, what about a mechanical grandparents level? Yeah. And if she laughs, that'd be good. Yeah, all right, that one's in. So it'll just be an idea. Oh, what about if in the latest one, 130, we want to, we're going to go into space. Yeah. I wanted to have aliens, and I wanted them to be abducted by aliens, not just them, but the entire tree is sucked up in space. Wow. Yeah. I thought, what a ridiculous image that is.
But that's a great premise, actually.
Yeah. And I knew that was where I started. I just said to Jill and Terry, I can see the tree flying through space, and we don't know where it's going. And so that's how we base it. And it's a long series of questions. Yeah. Who could abduct them? Where does it take them? What do they do there? How do they get home? How do we fill up 350 pages of nonsense? Yeah. So I'll come up with a structure. Maybe it takes 2 months to come up. I could tell you the story from beginning to end in about 10 minutes. Okay. And if I can pitch that to you and you're involved, then I know it's worth trying. We'll get Terry over and he'll give us some pictures of characters. he'll make me laugh about something, and off we'll go, and then we'll incorporate those ideas, and then I'll write a draft of it, and Jill will help me, and we'll make it look like the book, just with gaps for the pictures. So we're about, I don't know, 5 months in here. Then it goes to Terry for rough pictures.
Okay.
He'll spend a couple of months just putting all the rough pictures into place. Yeah. Then it comes back to us, and then we'll go, oh, this book isn't quite as hilarious as we thought. We've got some work to do. And so then we rearrange the book using his pictures, asking for new pictures. And then finally we get to the point where it's all set, and then he does the final artwork, which takes 3 months, because there's, I think it's well over 1,000 pictures in every book. Yeah. And so then we'll edit again for another month after that. Yeah. And then we're so exhausted with it, we'll go, we never want to see this thing again.
Then you guys party, right?
No, we just go, well, let's have a rest. Yeah. It's a funny thing, though, because we go through it, so we love doing it. And when we're coming up with the jokes, we are laughing and delighting ourselves. But after 100, 200 drafts, you're not laughing at every joke. And in fact, by the end, you think, this is a really nice stream of action, but it's not very funny, is it? Yeah. Then when the reader gets it, all the jokes are fresh, and then we go, I think we did it right. Yeah.
Andy, have you been to India ever for any shows or touring? Have you been here?
No, I haven't. No, the international touring is relatively new for us, because we spent 20 years being very well known in Australia. Yeah. But none of our books were ever published in other countries. The Australian sense of humour, whatever we were doing, it just wasn't translating. Okay. So we kind of thought, it must be we're Australians, we have our own sense of humour, and no one else really gets it. Yeah. Because we're pretty wild. There's no messages in the stories.
I can't argue with that, to be honest.
No message other than, isn't reading a great fun thing to do?
Of course.
Wow. Yeah. But there's no messages. There's no, they're not polite. You can be quite shocked by the things that happen. But the Australian kids know, everyone's used to us here.
Of course.
But when we did the Treehouse, suddenly the rest of the world were able to access it. And it really surprised us, because we'd given up. We'd given up on you.
Oh.
And it was a lovely surprise. And so I've really only been touring for the world for the last 5 or 6 years. Yeah. And we're delighted to find that the stories translate.
Yeah. I think your readers in India would request you to come and tour over here.
That'd be amazing. Yes.
And because we are based near Delhi, New Delhi, and it's a place called Dehradun, and it's quite near to where Ruskin Bond lives. And we have so many great writers coming out of Mussoorie and Dehradun, and Ruskin Bond has left a huge, long legacy in this genre. So not exactly this, but of course, children's books. So we would look forward to, attending your sessions. Tell me something. I feel that you have also commented on censorship in a way, because there is, I hope I can mention it, the story police in the book, the 117th story Treehouse. And I found that was my favorite part, when the story police arrives. So tell me something. Was it sarcastic? Why did that come up?
I suppose because me and Terry have never felt like we're proper writers. We don't do conventional books. They're the kind of normal, like other people's books. And that's partly by design and partly because we can't write anything else. But we always feel like we're on the outside. We're these clowns. We're kind of the clowns of the scene. And we love that. We love being on the outside.
Yeah.
But we've often had people telling us, you can't do that in a story. You can't show that child doing that dangerous thing, because then the children reading the book will think that it's all right to do the dangerous thing.
Seriously, it's like the first few pages itself, there are so many things I was just wishing my daughter never reads.
Well, yeah, the first story there is where the boy pretends that he's dead to get out of school.
Yeah.
And then the parents pretend to think he's dead, and then they dig a hole and
grave,
bury him. And I thought, if I can get away with this story, which is basically, to me, that is Hansel and Gretel kind of horror. Hansel and Gretel, I always looked at, the children are abandoned by their parents. A witch tries to eat them. They push the witch into the oven, and it's murder. And then they get to keep all her jewels, which is theft. And we read this to our children. Here's a lovely story, children, because it's real, and it's dealing with real fears and real danger. And so I wanted to do that in a modern context, and I wasn't scared of parents burying the child, because there's laughs there that make it not so terrible. But people would say, "Oh, well, we think the children will read this and they'll go out of control." But I knew from being a child that I read wild things, and I knew that's what happens in a book. And then I would be perfectly well controlled in real life. And I think we all have that ability. As adults, we can read a crime thriller, a murder mystery, without feeling, oh, I might go and do some murder now.
Of course.
Most of us anyway. So I think we know the difference, and we think that kids don't. And so we give them very safe stories that aren't very interesting, because we're mistaking the book for reality. And I think our starting point has always been, a book is not reality, so why even bother? Well, let's go wild and see how far we can take our imaginations, and what a fun ride we can have with the children. And it's a game. And so that's been the basic tension I've had between the story police. You can't do this, you shouldn't do that. And I'm going, actually, you can. Actually,
I think so. You guys are really smart, and you have commented about everything, and nobody can even say anything, because it's in a fun manner. Also, the fun parts for me in the latest 107 stories were the point where Terry starts drawing dots, and that's something which evolves into all hell breaks loose. That simple premise, I mean, it was just amazing. Were there any discussions of changing it, or just keeping it as it is?
No, that came pretty naturally, that story. Because in the book, Andy is always skeptical that Terry can tell a sensible story. Because that's their basic tension. In an earlier book, Andy tries to draw, and Terry says you can't draw, so they have a big drawing competition. Whenever the characters are butting heads, there's a lot of laughter. But with the dots, that's the kind of repetitive humour that I really love, where you just could do the same thing over and over and over. At first it's funny, then it stops being funny. You go, what, are they just going to keep doing this? And then you go, yeah, they're just going to keep doing it. And it becomes really funny.
I was like taken aback by that kind of writing, because they go fast, they go slow, they go high, they go low, and this keeps on repeating, and it gets funny after a point of time, right? In the beginning, I was like worried. I mean, what's happening?
Yeah, it's all the books have rhymes too, because a lot of the books I grew up with, um, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, for instance, often breaks into little poems. So that's part of what we love to do. But yeah, the repetitive humour is a hallmark of what we've always done.
And in fact, one chapter, the entire chapter is like rhymed. I mean, the entire chapter is rhymed. I completely forget the chapter name. Uh,
To be the cat, no, the splat in the hat,
the Splat
where
in
we're
the Hat.
making fun
Yes,
of Dr. Seuss. Yeah.
yes, yes. The entire chapter is rhymed, and that was quite a, you broke away from the entire structure of the book. I was like, okay, this is a different book altogether. All of a sudden.
Well, the 117, we're very proud of it because it's actually there's three different separate books in there.
Yeah.
And our book, of course, tying it all together. So that's us just exploring. Where can you take this? How far can you go? Can you abandon your book and go into a whole other genre? And of course you can. It takes work. As I said, there's a lot of weaving backwards and forwards. And fortunately, Jill is really good at rhymes.
Yeah.
So she'll work for days just getting those rhymes exact, long after I've been exhausted with it.
Andy, you have mentioned on your website that you were at one point of time in a punk band and you were an English teacher. So what happened? I mean, because you have said that during teaching you felt that the books were not interesting, but what was going on with the punk band?
Well, as I grew up, I loved books and comics, but I also loved rock and roll.
Yeah.
Especially in the 70s when I grew up, there was David Bowie, there was Alice Cooper, putting on great imaginative, funny, horrific kind of mock horror shows.
Yeah.
And I just thought this was great. And so I started having a pretend band with my friends at school. I couldn't sing or play an instrument, but we would do these concerts for the school. And they were just mad. They were stupid.
Yeah.
But everyone loved them because they were just joyful noise. And so that was the thing I did for a long time.
Yeah.
Until I realized I can't really sing and I can't really play, but I love writing the words. And so I segued from the bands into like really studying how to write, becoming an English teacher. And then the first thing I did was start writing for my students, going, this is how you can have fun with writing.
Yeah.
And I would collect their little stories and make little books out of their stories and go, look, now you're all authors, and put their book in the library. And then I started photocopying little collections of my stories, and that's how I eventually became a writer.
I was watching a session of yours with you and Terry. I think you were on tour, and it was so much fun. The kids wanted to get on top of the stage, and they wanted to press that red button. I think that was the video I watched. Yeah. So, what year was that tour?
That was about 2 years ago, on one of our Australian Treehouse tours, which are, I mean, we're not actors, but we're provocateurs. We know how to stir a group of children up and tease them and make the talk not a talk, but sort of act out some of the things. In the book, there's a big red button, and Terry always wants to push it, so we put that on stage. And then it's me talking to the audience. Do you want us to push the button? Yes. And I go, no way. Yes. And the more you argue with them, the more the energy goes up. No one even realizes it's an author illustrator talk.
I mean, it's so much fun. I mean, it's like a concert, if I can call it that.
So that's where my performing thing in a punk band came out. And it's very important to me that, like as a singer in a band, you're on stage, you're entertaining an audience. I feel exactly the same way when I write the book. I just haven't got the audience directly in front of me.
Yeah.
But I know this is a performance.
Yeah.
So that when we then go onto stage, that too is a performance. And we're having fun with the kids and interacting with them. That's very important to us.
Yeah, that's a great way of thinking, that you're performing for an audience. Since this is the Booknerds podcast, tell us some of your favorite books growing up, or something that you might pick up, when you are not writing.
Well, the books I pick up are a lot of, I've referred to them in the Treehouse books, such as the Dr. Seuss books. I loved those. I loved Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. I loved kind of the classic stories like Peter Pan, Roald Dahl stories, but more the adult stories. So Charlie and the Chocolate Factory was a big one. And an English writer, Enid Blyton, do you know her?
Yes, of course.
Big popular there.
Yes.
No one knows who she is in America, which amazes me, but she was huge here.
Even in India, the books are quite big.
Yeah. She knew how to tell a story. She'd just get the kids into danger by the end of chapter 1. Very little description, a lavish imagination, and so she was my real storytelling model, really. And she had a book called The Magic Faraway Tree, where a tree full of incredible characters, and also lands at the top that would come around, like upside down land and shouting land. And really, I think the Treehouse is kind of drawing on that sense of freedom and fun, but also the danger that you'll get trapped in one of these lands, or hurt by something in the tree.
Yeah.
So she was big. And horror comics. I loved comics. Science fiction style, mad professors creating things in the laboratory. Monsters rampaging over the city and people trying to stop them. So comics and books were interchangeable for me, which is why we write the Treehouse books, which are a kind of hybrid graphic novel, but with full narrative as well.
Thank you so much, Andy, for being with us. It has been great talking to you. Thank you for sparing time and giving us your book recommendations. I would like to recommend all the Treehouse books to everyone who will be watching. And thank you so much for the great times, the great stories that you have told us all. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, and hope to see you in India before too long.
Of course. Looking forward to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. See you later.
Bye.